I was 45 days deep into job hunting hell when I found the listing. It was wedged somewhere around page 6 of my late-night Google search for night security jobs near me. By that point, I was numb to the cookie-cutter postings, $15 an hour warehouse gigs, sketchy third-party listings with spelling mistakes, promises of growth potential that actually meant 12-hour shifts and no benefits. But this one was different. KN Security Officer, HollowBrook Storage Solutions. Shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Pay, $42.50 per hour. No experience necessary. Immediate start. Must follow written instructions precisely. No phone calls. I blinked twice, thinking I'd misread the wage. $42.50? That had to be a typo, surely. I clicked, expecting a redirect to a scam site or an "oops, page not found" error. But no, the job was real, or at least the page looked real enough. No logos. No contact person. No company blurb or mission statement. Just the offer. And the coordinates. Literal GPS coordinates instead of an address. Something about it should have screamed run. But desperation has a way of silencing your instincts. I hadn't made rent in 2 months. I was living off ramen, and my landlord was one missed call away from changing the locks. So I clicked apply and attached my bare-bones resume. Time sent, 3:47 p.m. Reply received, 3:48 p.m. Interview confirmed. Report to coordinates at 9 p.m. Bring government-issued ID. We will find you if you're late. That last line sent a shiver down my spine. But again, I told myself it was just some weird attempt at being edgy. Security companies sometimes have a flair for dramatics. I tossed my hoodie over a wrinkled shirt, printed a copy of my resume even though they hadn't asked for one, and plugged the coordinates into Google Maps. It led me 20 minutes outside the city, to an industrial park I didn't even know existed. I arrived at 8:56 p.m. The surrounding warehouses all had illuminated signs or at least unit numbers, except for HollowBrook. It was the only building without a name. No lights. No logo. Just a solid slab of gray concrete stretching further than I could see, with a single, unmarked metal door sunk into the front wall. No windows. No signs. No sound. No life. I hesitated in the parking lot, engine still running. The trees behind the structure swayed unnaturally, even though I couldn't feel wind. That was the first time I noticed something was off. I stepped out. The gravel crunched too loudly beneath my boots. A woman was standing beside the door, as still as a statue. She wore a gray pantsuit that didn't quite match the setting. Her hair was pulled into a tight, bone-white bun, and her face was unreadable, neither welcoming nor unwelcoming. Just blank. No hello. No name. No handshake. She simply pulled open the metal door and gestured inside. The corridor beyond was flooded with buzzing fluorescent light, the kind that hums incessantly and flickers just enough to trigger a headache. The hall was narrow, institutional, featureless. At the end, a single metal door stood ajar. The woman pointed toward it. I walked forward like I was sleepwalking, the click of her heels behind me sharp and deliberate. The office inside was equally bare. Metal desk. 2 metal chairs. A dusty TV cart with a VCR, yes, an actual VCR, and nothing else. No computer. No landline. Not even a damn clock. The woman remained standing as I took a seat. Then, without expression, she asked the one question that should have sent me bolting from my car. "Do you have any family members who would look for you?" I stared at her, unsure if I'd heard her right. "Excuse me? Do you have anyone who would file a missing persons report if you didn't return home tomorrow?" Silence. I wanted to ask what the hell kind of question that was. I should have stood up, walked out, reported them to someone, anyone. But instead, I found myself answering, almost reflexively. No, not really. She marked something on a clipboard, nodding once. You start tonight. Orientation begins now. You have 11 minutes. She turned toward the VCR and inserted a tape that looked so old it should have disintegrated. The label just read orientation, HollowBrook in faded red ink. She left the room without another word. Static. Then a jarring click. The screen flickered to life with a timestamp, July 13, 1993. But the quality, it was too crisp. Too detailed for a VHS. The colors were off, slightly oversaturated. The audio? Crystal clear. A man's voice, flat and emotionless, began to speak. Welcome to HollowBrook Storage Solutions. Our facility consists of 38 climate-controlled units across 4 corridors, east, north, west, and south. Your duties include hourly patrols, monitoring surveillance feeds, and assisting customers accessing their units between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Please follow all written instructions provided by your predecessor. Your safety depends on your compliance. The video showed footage of each corridor, long stretches of gunmetal gray doors, each labeled with numbers that were hard to track. The camera never lingered. Never returned to a door once it passed it. I tried counting the doors but kept getting confused after 20-something. Something about the motion of the camera felt intentional, like it was deliberately keeping the layout vague. Then the video ended. Abruptly. Black screen. No credits. No, thank you. Just silence. The door opened behind me. The woman returned, setting a yellowed sheet of paper on the desk in front of me. I could see immediately that it was water damaged. The bottom corner was warped, stained with some dark liquid. But it didn't smell like water. In fact, it didn't smell like anything at all. Courier new typeface. 10 numbered rules. Follow these instructions precisely. Your predecessor left them for you. I looked up, expecting to ask questions, but the woman was already walking away. Your shift begins in 2 minutes. The security office is through that door, she said, pointing to a doorway that hadn't been there when I entered. And then she was gone. I picked up the paper and began to read. Rule 1. When checking security cameras, count the number of visible storage units. If you count more than 40, immediately shut off the feed and wait 7 minutes before turning it back on. Never look at Unit 41. Never acknowledge anything beyond Unit 41. My stomach turned. This wasn't some quirky company policy. This was a warning. A survival guide. Rule 2. If you hear whistling from the east corridor, whistle the same tune back exactly once. Do not whistle any other tune. Do not respond twice. The first whistler isn't always one of us. What the hell had I signed up for? Rule 3. The vending machine in the break room restocks itself at 2:47 a.m. Do not watch this happen. If you see snacks with blue packaging after 3 a.m., do not eat them, no matter how hungry you become. Rule 4. Your predecessor left behind a coffee mug. Do not move it. Do not clean it. Do not use it. If the coffee level inside changes between rounds, immediately cut power to the building at the breaker for exactly 12 seconds. Rule 5. You may encounter customers between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. If they show you a receipt dated February 29th on a non-leap year, do not follow them. Do not let them lead you to their unit. The remaining rules were even more disturbing. One involved checking your reflection. Another required answering a landline phone only between 3:33 and 3:36 a.m. with a specific phrase. One rule warned about the ceiling fan spinning in the wrong direction. Another told me never to read sticky notes in red ink unless I wanted to deliver them to a specific unit before the ink took hold. And then Rule 10. Rule 10. At exactly 5:55 a.m., all security feeds will show static for 60 seconds. During this time, sit at your desk. Face the door. Do not turn around. No matter what you hear behind you. The person calling your name is not your replacement. The paper trembled in my hands. I wasn't shaking, it was. As I entered the security office, a wave of nausea hit me. 4 black and white monitors buzzed quietly. A landline sat beside a chipped ceramic coffee mug stained with dried residue. The vending machine in the break room hummed softly behind a corner. A ceiling fan rotated slowly, counterclockwise. I looked at my phone. No signal. I looked at the mug. Coral pink lipstick on the rim. I sat down, and the first minute of my shift began. Only now do I realize. I should never have answered yes to that question. The first 30 minutes passed in relative silence. I spent most of it trying to memorize the 10 rules. I knew I couldn't afford to check the sheet every time something happened, and besides, I wasn't sure if I'd always be allowed to. Some part of me, the logical, sane part, was still whispering, "This is an elaborate prank. Some escape room stunt. A performance art piece gone viral." But that part of me grew quieter with every breath. It wasn't just the strangeness of the job, it was the building itself. The corridors stretched longer than they should. My steps echoed wrong. The fluorescent lights buzzed in uneven tones, like a voice trying to form words just outside the range of hearing. Even the air felt compressed. It was 10:15 p.m. when I stood up for my first patrol. The corridor lights blinked once as I left the office, as if acknowledging my presence. I brought a pen and notepad with me, wanting to count the storage units like the rules instructed. Rule 1 had been clear: if I ever counted more than 40 units, I was to shut off the camera feeds immediately and wait 7 minutes. The problem? The layout of the place made counting near impossible. East Corridor, 10:20 p.m. The East Corridor greeted me with a sudden drop in temperature. I checked the wall-mounted digital thermometer as I passed, 48.3 degrees Fahrenheit. Exactly as the video had said. Not a degree more, not a degree less. As I walked, I counted aloud in a whisper. 1, 2, 3. The units all looked identical, gunmetal gray doors with black plastic numbers bolted on. The numbers weren't sequential, though. Unit 17 was somehow wedged between Unit 4 and Unit 29. 22, 23, 24. The numbers blurred in my head. Some doors had no labels. Some had 2. Others seemed to move ever so slightly when I passed them, as if adjusting their spacing. I stopped at what I believed was the end of the corridor and checked my notebook. Count, 39 units. A cold knot twisted in my stomach. The video had said 38. The blueprint in the security office had shown 38. The rules insisted 40 was a danger zone. Had I miscounted? I counted again on my way back, same number. 39. Back in the office, 10:35 p.m. I examined the monitors. Screen 1 showed East Corridor, 10 units visible. Screen 2, North, 9 units. Screen 3, West, 10. Screen 4, South, 10. Total, 39 units. But it didn't make sense. Each corridor was supposed to have 8 units, with 6 additional in the central intersection, totaling 38. I scribbled into my notebook. Orientation video showed 38. Then scratched it out. Orientation video showed 39. Scratched that too. When I looked back at the blueprint, something new had appeared, text I hadn't noticed before, smudged near the bottom right corner. Original facility layout, prior to 1993 renovations. I turned slowly to look at the coffee mug again. The lipstick mark had faded from coral to burgundy. I didn't remember that happening. I didn't remember looking away. 10:45 p.m., the whistle. The air shifted. I was halfway down the East Corridor again when I heard it, a faint, breathy sound from the far end. 3 descending notes. Musical note do, da, do, like someone whistling a tune that didn't belong in this world. My heart slammed against my ribs. Rule 2. If you hear whistling from the East Corridor, whistle the same tune back exactly once. Do not whistle any other tune. Do not respond twice. The first whistler isn't always one of us. I stood frozen, every instinct screaming to run. The sound repeated again, slightly louder this time. The exact same notes. Musical note do, da, do. I opened my lips, and tried to mimic it, breath shaking. Musical note do, da, do. Then silence. The corridor was empty, but somehow I felt seen. 11 p.m., the coffee mug moves. Back in the office, The first thing I noticed was the coffee mug. It was no longer 6 inches from the phone. Now it was 3. The rule came rushing back: if the coffee level changes, cut power to the building for exactly 12 seconds. I leaned in. The coffee line had dropped. And now the lipstick mark looked pink. My pulse spiked. I tore open the breaker box cover, flipped the main switch down, and counted aloud. 1, 2, 3. Every light in the office died. The hum of electricity ceased. In the darkness, I swore I could hear faint whispering beneath the silence. A dry, papery sound, like lips moving too fast to form actual words. 11. 12. I restored power. When the lights came back on, the mug was full again. The lipstick now coral. The camera feeds flickered once, and reset. Units visible. 38. 11:30 p.m., lights flicker at the wrong time. I leaned back in the chair, trying to calm myself. Then the parking lot light outside the window flickered. Not on the hour. The rule hit me like a hammer to the spine. If the light flickers at any time other than the hour, check your reflection in the office window. If it isn't visible, lock yourself in the supply closet until sunrise. I turned slowly to the office window. My reflection was there. I sighed, relieved. But then it moved. 3 seconds later. It turned to look at me. 3 seconds after I had moved. I leapt back and slammed the supply closet door shut. Locked it. Didn't move. Not until I heard the buzz of the light returning to normal. 12 o'clock midnight, something shifts. I'd now been in HollowBrook for 2 hours. 2 very long hours. And something was shifting. The corridors didn't feel like they led to the same place anymore. The air smelled stale, like old leather and mildew, the scent you get from a flooded basement or clothes buried too long. The coffee mug's lipstick mark had changed 3 times. The camera feed still showed 38 units. But I knew the real count was 39. Or maybe 40. Or maybe it was never a number. Maybe it was a heartbeat. Breathing. At 12:07 a.m., I sat at the desk again, notebook open, and wrote the only sentence that made sense anymore. The rules are not suggestions. The rules are not for control. The rules are for survival. Then, for reasons I can't explain, I flipped to the back of the notebook, and wrote, Unit 41 is watching. I don't remember writing that. But the pen in my hand was dry. And the lipstick mark on the mug? Was now shaped like a smile. At exactly 12:31 a.m., I stepped into the north corridor. I didn't need to. There was no specific rule saying I had to patrol every corridor at regular intervals, but something in me, some instinct sharpened by 2 hours of impossible experiences, insisted I walk. Move. Keep checking. Keep confirming. As if staying still made me more vulnerable. The north corridor was warmer than the east. Not much, but noticeable. The wall-mounted thermometer flickered between 67 degrees Fahrenheit and 71 degrees Fahrenheit, changing every few seconds like it couldn't decide what was real. I listened closely. The clicks of the temperature display began to synchronize with something even more unnerving, my heartbeat. Click. Thump. Click. Thump. Click. Thump. Then the numbers froze, 67 degrees Fahrenheit, and stayed there. But I could still hear the clicking. And I could feel it in my chest. 12:38 a.m., disjointed design. I began counting doors again. 1, 2, 3. It was simple enough in theory. Just note the numbers, write them down, count the total. 4, 5. Then I noticed something that made my breath hitch. Unit 17. Again. It had already appeared in the east corridor. And now, here it was again. Same door. Same black number plate. Same scratch on the left edge. Same faint smear of what looked like dried coffee at the bottom. How could a unit exist in 2 different wings of the building? I kept walking, trying to keep calm. I counted forward, mentally blocking out the rules, until I reached a number that stopped me dead in my tracks. Unit 41. No. No, no, no. The rules were clear. I should not be seeing this. My throat dried instantly. I turned slowly, stepped back. Looked again. Unit 41 was gone. In its place stood Unit 13. I pulled out my notebook, flipping back to the earlier pages where I'd drawn crude corridor maps and jotted layout notes. No mention of Unit 13 in the north corridor. I pressed my hand to the cold metal of the door. No vibration. No sound. But something on the back of the door, the part facing the hallway, had been scratched. 3 words. Sloppily carved in what looked like fingernail marks. Do not count. 12:45 a.m., the return of the whistle. It came from behind me. 3 notes. Falling like a child's lullaby. Musical note do, da, do. Same as before. From the east corridor. But I wasn't in the east anymore. That's what made it wrong. The sound wasn't directional. It wasn't tied to a space. It was tied to me. I froze. Rule 2 echoed in my head. If you hear whistling from the east corridor, whistle the same tune back exactly once. Do not whistle any other tune. Do not respond twice. This wasn't the east corridor. Not physically. But the whistle, it carried the same cadence, the same weight. As if something east-like had followed me here. I turned slowly toward the sound. My flashlight flickered for a brief second. When it came back, there was nothing in sight. No person. No shadow. No change. And yet, when I turned back toward the way I came. Unit 41. Again. Exactly where Unit 13 had just been. I closed my eyes and whistled. Musical note do, da, do. And in the second that followed, the air changed. The corridor felt like it had grown lungs. 12:50 a.m., phantom layout. I started back toward the office, walking faster than I meant to, heart thundering. The halls now stretched longer than before. I was certain of it. Corridors were not just physical, they were elastic here. Each turn, each corner led back to the same place, Unit 17, Unit 4, Unit 29. Always the same sequence. Shuffled like a deck of cards where every card was a joker in disguise. It took me 12 minutes to find the supply closet again. And when I opened the door, I found the coffee mug sitting on the top shelf. Not just a mug. The mug. Same ceramic chip on the handle. Same faint ring of lipstick, still coral, or maybe burgundy. Impossible to tell. The rule didn't say anything about finding the mug somewhere it didn't belong. Just not to move it. But now it had moved itself. Or maybe I had followed it. 1:03 a.m., watching the watcher. Back in the office, the monitors flickered one by one. I checked the feeds again. Counted quickly. East corridor, 10 units. North corridor, 10 units. West corridor, 10 units. South corridor, 10 units. Total, 40. Too many. Rule 1. My hand shot forward and killed the monitor power. I sat back in the chair, counting down 7 minutes in my head. The rules weren't threats. They were warnings. Warnings with teeth. I wrote in my notebook. Units are not physical. They are observational. They change based on what I acknowledge. Looking is building. And as I finished writing that line, a sticky note fell from the ceiling fan and landed on my desk. Written in black ink. You're learning. 1:10 a.m., breathing in the numbers. I flipped through the logbook of past security guards. Most had only a few entries, first shift notes, temperature readings, idle thoughts. A few names were repeated. A couple of them had underlined Rule 10. One guard had written, They always test you with the whistle. The moment you answer, they know you're real. Another had written, Unit 41 changes shape depending on your sins. And one final note, circled in red. Unit 41 is not a place. It's a permission. That line stayed with me. The idea that the unit only appeared when you accepted it, or gave it shape, made everything worse. Because I had acknowledged it. Twice. 1:25 a.m., the return. The whistling came again. 3 descending notes. But this time, it came from behind the office door. The door I had locked. The door I hadn't opened since returning from the north corridor. The handle rattled. And then I heard, whistling. From me. From inside. Musical note do, da, do. I had whistled back too many times. I had counted too many units. I had read too far into what was supposed to be memorized. The person whistling now had my voice. At 1:30 a.m., I flipped back to Rule 2 in the original instruction sheet. I noticed something I hadn't before. A watermark under the rule text. It became visible only when tilted toward the desk lamp. It read, "Don't answer the third time." And in that moment, the whistling came again. A third time. Same tune. Only now it came from inside the security monitors, each of them displaying Unit 41, over and over and over. I killed the feed. I stood up. And the coffee mug was empty. The buzzer shattered the silence. It wasn't the sound that unnerved me, it was the way it sounded. Like it wasn't triggered by a human pressing a button but by the building itself exhaling something through the speakers. I turned toward the monitor labeled CAM4, the lobby entrance. There she was. An elderly woman stood facing the entrance, back to the camera. She wore a beige cardigan, long floral skirt, and orthopedic shoes that looked decades old. Her hands were clasped behind her back, and her white hair was tied in a tight bun. She didn't knock. She didn't press the buzzer again. She just stood, unnaturally still. I activated the speaker button. "Ma'am, can I help you?" She didn't move. Then, slowly, without turning her body, she rotated her torso. Completely. 180 degrees. Her head followed in a smooth, delayed twist. Now she was staring directly into the security camera. And smiling. "I need to access my unit," she said. Her voice was calm, measured, grandmotherly. But her eyes didn't blink. Didn't twitch. Didn't even reflect light. Something about her posture was wrong. Her neck looked too long. Her shoulders too high, like someone had assembled a mannequin and pulled the joints too tight. I paused. Rule 5 throbbed in my mind. Customers may appear during your shift. If they present a receipt dated February 29th in a non-leap year, do not assist them. Do not follow them to their unit. I tapped the mic. "May I see your receipt, ma'am?" She smiled again, too wide this time, and held up a small paper toward the camera. It was grainy, but I could read it. Date of transaction, February 29th, 1991. 1991 wasn't a leap year. I clicked the intercom again. "I'm sorry. You may be at the wrong facility." Her smile didn't fade. She raised her other hand and waved gently. Then, slowly, she started turning her torso back around, before her feet moved, like a vinyl doll rotating on a fixed base. I stared at the monitor. She was gone. Except, on CAM2, she appeared again. Inside. 1:52 a.m., Unit 4, or 17. I rushed to the camera switcher. There she was again. Walking down the west corridor, her steps oddly light, almost gliding. She stopped at Unit 4. But her voice came through the speaker in the office hallway. "My receipt says Unit 17. I'd like you to open it for me." I spun around, eyes darting between screens and the office door. No buzz. No unlocking sound. The building hadn't opened the magnetic locks. She had simply entered. Against the rules. Against physics. 1:55 a.m., disrupted reality. I checked the logbook. No entry listed any customer at this hour. I flipped to earlier pages, blank. No mention of her. No record of February 29th receipts. Nothing. Then the logbook began to change as I stared. One moment, it read, "No activity, 1 a.m., temp 67 degrees Fahrenheit." The next, a new line appeared beneath it. Customer entered with valid documentation. Assisted to Unit 17. Written in my handwriting. I hadn't written it. My hand was gripping the desk the entire time. I looked toward the mug. The lipstick mark had deepened in color. Burgundy, maybe even crimson. And the level of coffee had risen, despite me not touching it. 2 a.m., the time loop begins. I glanced at the wall clock. Still 1:55 a.m. I checked my phone. 1:59 a.m. Then back to the wall clock. 1:47 a.m. Time was fracturing. I opened the logbook again. The last entry now read, "You are the receipt." And then, in smaller handwriting, barely visible, "She doesn't need the door. She's already inside your shift." 2:03 a.m., the bathroom incident. I stood abruptly. I needed a second to breathe. Maybe splash water on my face. Something. Anything. There was a staff bathroom across the hall, one that hadn't existed during my orientation. But tonight, it was there. I could see the flickering fluorescent bulb buzzing above it. I pushed the door open. Inside, a single toilet, small sink, wall mirror, rust around the drain. As I washed my hands, the mirror shifted behind me. Not the image. The mirror itself. It showed the door behind me open. But I had closed it. Then a figure entered the reflection, crooked neck, long skirt. I did not turn around. 20 seconds. I stared at the drain. The smell of dust and old fabric grew thick in my nose. When I finally looked up, the mirror showed nothing. No woman. But now, the door was open. In real life too. 2:10 a.m., memory contamination. Back in the office, the woman was gone from all cameras. Or, had she ever been on them? My notebook, where I had written about Unit 41, now had new entries I didn't remember writing. Don't let her speak your name. If she asks about your mother, lie. If she whistles, don't whistle back. Wait. That contradicted Rule 2. I flipped the rule sheet over. A new line had appeared, typed in identical courier font. Do not follow any rules written after her arrival. The paper was warped with the same brown stain as before, but now it pulsed faintly, as though wet from the inside. I backed away. And the coffee mug shattered on the desk. No wind. No movement. Just a single, sharp crack, and it was in 5 pieces. No coffee inside. Only loose strands of white hair. 2:15 a.m., collapse of tracking. All camera feeds now displayed static, except one. Cam 3, the west corridor. The woman in the cardigan stood facing the far wall, unmoving. Then, on the feed, the numbers above the doors began to change. Unit 4 became 17. Then 29. Then 41. Then 17 again. As if the corridor were alive, adjusting itself to her desires. I stared at the live feed for too long. She turned to the camera, still miles away, and raised her hand in a wave. And smiled. I don't remember writing this. But the logbook has it in my handwriting. Assisted Helen there to her unit. Timestamp, February 29, 1991. Location, Shift 6. Entry approved. I flipped to the front page. My name was now written under guard number 41. And in the coffee mug's remains was a receipt. Signed, Helen there. Date, February 29, 1991. Unit, your shift. I was trying not to sleep, not to think, not to blink. Every instinct screamed at me to go home, but that place, the outside world, already felt like a rumor. The camera feeds were calm again. Calm in the way a predator stays still just before it pounces. I looked toward the desk. That's when I saw it. A sticky note, stuck to the far right edge. I hadn't seen it before. The handwriting was jagged, irregular, as if written in a rush, or by someone whose fingers didn't quite work like they should. The ink was deep red. "Thank you for letting me out." 2:32 a.m., the realization. Rule 9 returned to me like a whispered scream. If you find a sticky note written in red ink, burn it immediately without reading. If you've already read it, you have 10 minutes to transcribe the message and slide it under Unit 13's door. My blood ran cold. I'd read it. Not just read it, comprehended it. Every cell in my body vibrated with the awareness that I had made a mistake. A real one. A fatal one. I looked at the clock, 2:32 a.m. I had until 2:42 to fix this. 10 minutes. 2:34 a.m., the pen and the paper. I grabbed a blank page from the logbook and began copying the message. "Thank you for letting me out." 7 words. That's all it was. I wrote it in block letters. Then cursive. Then backward. I didn't know what format the thing required. My heart wouldn't slow. My vision was tunneled. Sweat stung my eyes. The room felt smaller. The lights dimmed slightly. Not flickered, dimmed. As if someone was slowly turning down the brightness of the entire reality. 2:36 a.m., locating Unit 13. I rushed out of the office, clutching the paper. Unit 13. Where was it? Earlier, I saw it in the North Corridor, after Unit 4, before Unit 29. But last time I looked, that same spot had been occupied by Unit 41. I sprinted to the East Corridor. Unit 1. Unit 2. Unit 5. Unit 9. Number 13. I turned back. The hallway shifted. That's the only word I can use. The floor flexed under my feet like an exhale. The air shimmered like heat rising off asphalt. Now the numbers read. Unit 4. Unit 13. Unit 29. I stepped closer. It was here. The door was taller than before. Narrower. The number 13 had been carved into the metal, not painted like the others. I knelt. My hand trembled as I slid the paper under the door. Then, a hand slid it back out. 2:38 a.m., the hand. It was pale, long-fingered, with nails that curled slightly backward. No blood. No bones. The paper came back changed. My writing was gone. In its place, new words. "She's not out. You are." I stumbled backward, heart in my throat. Behind the door, I heard something move, a soft slither followed by a breath. A wet breath. I didn't wait. 2:40 a.m. echoes behind me. I sprinted back to the security office. The hall shifted around me like a funhouse maze. I turned left 3 times and still ended up back at the same intersection. But something followed me. I heard footsteps that didn't match mine. Breaths that answered mine. The ceiling lights dimmed as I passed under them. Not flickering. Dimming. Like they were trying to match my heart rate. 2:41 a.m., back at the desk. I reached the desk with 1 minute to spare. But something was off. The coffee mug was gone. In its place, a manila envelope. Unmarked. Sealed. Inside, a Polaroid photo. A picture of me, taken from behind. Looking into the security monitors. The timestamp, 2:41 a.m. But I was holding it at 2:41 a.m. I dropped the envelope. The office door creaked open slowly, on its own. 2:42 a.m., 10 minutes are up. My time was up. 10 minutes since I read the red ink. And nothing happened. I stood there frozen, waiting. Expecting a hand to grab me, or the lights to fail, or the floor to swallow me whole. But none of that happened. Instead, the monitors turned back on. Each of them showed Unit 13. And behind the door? Myself. Final log, Chapter 5. I don't know if the rules protect you, or trap you. All I know is, I followed Rule 9 too late. Now I see things before they happen. Now the monitors show me things I haven't done yet. And on the sticky note beside the Polaroid, freshly stuck, in my own handwriting. Thank you for letting me in. According to Rule 3, the vending machine in the break room restocks itself at this exact time. And you must not watch it. Which was easy in theory, until you realized that watching was sometimes involuntary. I'd made it back to the office. The lights had stopped flickering. My coffee mug remained shattered on the floor, no refills, no lipstick. The cameras were calm again. I was writing down everything. It was the only thing that felt like control. But the more I wrote, the more the notebook responded, changing words, rewriting phrases, crossing things out before I could. And that's when I heard it. A soft mechanical hum. Not a buzz. Not a clank. A hum, like the motor of an old refrigerator, vibrating just beyond perception. It came from the break room. The vending machine. But when I checked my watch, it wasn't 2:47 yet. It was 2:15 a.m. 2:15 a.m. early restock. Rule 3 had said nothing about an early restock. I stood in the office doorway and peeked toward the break room. The vending machine's lights were blinking in patterns I'd never seen before. Its keypad lit up with symbols, not numbers. Foreign glyphs, some like twisted letters, others like distorted animals. The machine made no sound of dropping snacks. But the collection tray slowly slid open. A blue-wrapped item sat inside. Blue. I remembered the line exactly. Do not consume blue packaged snacks after 3 a.m. But it was only 2:15. That should have meant it was safe. Should have. But in HollowBrook, logic wasn't just unreliable, it was predatory. 2:20 a.m., the temptation. I stepped forward. The machine shifted as I approached. Literally shifted. Its weight pressed into the tile, sinking it a quarter inch. Its lights dimmed, then flared, showing not just one blue package but 7. Each in the tray. Waiting. I could smell the wrappers. Not what was inside, but the wrappers, plastic, chemical, sticky with artificial sugar. Then the digital display changed. 32:2 a.m. 32? I backed away. It flickered again. Welcome back, Helen. My stomach dropped. 2:25 a.m., power surge. I ran to the breaker panel and flipped the main switch. 12 seconds. Just like Rule 4 advised. 1, 2, 3. When the lights came back, the machine was silent again. The snacks were gone. But the coffee mug was back on the desk. Full. With a new lipstick mark. Bright red. 2:47 a.m. official restock time. When the clock finally struck 2:47 a.m., the machine did nothing. No hum. No drop. No lights. It had done its job early, and against protocol. That alone was enough to break the rhythm of the night. Then something fell from the machine, not from the tray, but from its top vent. A single yellow envelope. It landed softly on the breakroom tiles. 2:50 a.m. maintenance log. Inside the envelope. A maintenance log. It was old, typed on aged matrix paper, faded along the edges, brittle like sun-dried parchment. Each entry listed unit numbers and alterations. I flipped to the first entry. July 13, 1993. Facility operational. 38 units. Installation complete. September 20, 1993. Expansion approved. Unit 39 added. December 25, 1993. Unexpected discovery, Unit 40 present upon inventory. No record of construction. February 29, 1994. Unit 41 scheduled for inspection. February 29, 1994. Entry redacted by order of management. February 29, 1994. Entry redacted by order of management. February 29, 1994. Entry redacted by order of management. My fingers trembled. 1994 wasn't a leap year. February 29th didn't exist that year. But the log insisted it had occurred 3 times. 3 a.m. all blue. The clock hit 3 a.m. I opened the break room door again. The vending machine was now entirely filled with blue packages. Every slot. Every row. Nothing else. Even the drinks were blue. A new note appeared taped to the glass. Snacks available for guard number 41. Enjoy your final meal. I backed away and slammed the door. 3:05 a.m., the whispering. The office grew colder. The monitors flickered, not into static, but into a repeating video feed, a grainy loop of the vending machine. On loop, it showed someone eating. A man. Alone. In uniform. Chewing something blue. Then, he begins to shake. Then, he vanishes. The machine resets. New snacks drop. And in the background? I saw myself. Watching. The landline rang. Once. Twice. I picked it up before the third ring, hands trembling. HollowBrook Storage. We're full at the moment. That was what Rule 7 instructed me to say. Nothing more. Say anything else, and you risk complications. For a moment, there was only silence. Then a voice, my voice, answered back. Are you sure about that? It wasn't a recording. It wasn't an echo. It was me. But it wasn't coming from the past, or the present. It was a version of me that had already made a different choice. 3:34 a.m., the voice in the wire. The line stayed connected. No static. No signal loss. Just the faintest sound of breathing. Then, whistling. 3 notes. Descending. Musical note do, da, doo. My stomach dropped. Not because of the tune, I'd heard it before, but because I was hearing it through the phone. That was new. That wasn't part of any rule. A shift was happening. The line buzzed once, and then the voice returned, still mine, but wrong. You should check Unit 41. Click. The line went dead. 3:36 a.m. Unrecorded pathways. I rushed to the logbook. Opened it to the current page. Nothing. No mention of the call. No record of my response. I flipped back through previous shifts. Dozens of names. Most had only a single page or 2 of notes. But a few names stood out. They were longer. Detailed. But also, incomplete. Each log ended without conclusion. No last shift. No resignation. No final signature. Then, just past the midpoint of the book, I found a different kind of page. Thicker. Glossy. A photograph paper. Printed on it, a blurry image of a man entering a storage unit, Unit 41, with a manila envelope in hand. He looked familiar. Not because I knew him, but because I could see myself in him. Same posture. Same jacket. Same left-handed grip on the flashlight. The timestamp, February 29, 2024. That was 3 days ago. 3:41 a.m., the list of survivors. I flipped toward the back of the logbook. A folded piece of paper slipped out, stained with the same brown odorless liquid that soaked the original rule sheet. On it, a list. Survived first week. Daniel W., entered Unit 41. Sherry G., entered Unit 41. Marvin C., entered Unit 41. Helen the and below that. Failed to comply. Unnamed, redacted. Unnamed, burned note. Unnamed, 8 blue. Unnamed, turned at 5:55. I noticed something chilling. The names of the survivors always ended with, entered Unit 41. Not exited. Not returned. Just entered. 3:45 a.m., the blueprint lies. I ripped the blueprint off the office wall. Behind it, scrawled in faded pencil, was a map, not the same as the printed one. This version had an added room. A node between corridors. Labeled simply. 41, breathes. The other units were boxed and rigid. This one was drawn in curved lines. Coiled. It wasn't built. It was grown. I touched the wall where it had been drawn. The concrete was warm. 3:50 a.m., return of the mug. The coffee mug was back. Clean. Whole. Filled again. No lipstick mark this time. Instead, something else inside, a security badge. I pulled it out. Photo ID. Name, Helen the Position, Shift Supervisor. Issue date, February 29th, every year. Status, in progress. On the back, someone had written in red, "You only exist while you are counted." 3:54 a.m., the hall breathing. I stepped into the hallway. Each corridor pulsed. I don't mean metaphorically. I mean the walls expanded and contracted, the way lungs move. The tiles undulated beneath my feet like a slow wave. The air grew thicker. I followed instinct, not the map, not memory, and found myself back between Unit 17 and Unit 29. There it was. Unit 41. Doorless. Instead, a curtain of darkness, as if someone had removed a section of the world and left the outline behind. 3:57 a.m., the choice. My hand hovered near the edge of the threshold. Inside the logbook, all paths stopped here. The door that was not a door. The space that was not a space. The rules never said what was inside Unit 41. They only said don't count it. But that's the problem, isn't it? We always count. Every step. Every hour. Every guard. Every scream. We think counting keeps us sane. But at HollowBrook, counting is what keeps them alive. I didn't enter Unit 41. Not yet. But I stood at the edge long enough to know what it does. It listens. It responds to awareness. It was never meant to be seen, just like the rules were never meant to be broken. And now that I've heard my own voice call from the future, I know where this is heading. I'm not guarding HollowBrook. I'm becoming it. The room was quiet. Too quiet. Even the buzzing from the fluorescent lights had died. I sat at the desk, facing the office door. The coffee mug was filled to the brim. The rim was still wet, as if someone had just taken a sip. I dared not move. The clock ticked. 5:55 a.m. The monitors went to static, every screen at once. I remembered Rule 10. At exactly 5:55 a.m., all security cameras will show static for 60 seconds. During this time, sit at your desk. Face the door. Do not turn around. No matter what you hear, the person behind you is not your replacement. I sat still. And the sounds began. 5:55 and 7 seconds a.m., the first footstep. Tap. Just one. Right behind my left shoulder. Like a bare foot stepping onto concrete. Then breathing. Wet breathing, like something exhaling water instead of air. I kept my eyes locked on the door in front of me. It didn't open. But the doorknob turned slightly. Then released. Then turned again. 5:55 and 22 seconds a.m., the whistle. Musical note do, da, do. The same 3 notes I'd heard all night. But now they came from inside the office. From right behind me. And then a voice. My voice. Hey. You forgot to count this time. Another step. Closer. I gripped the edges of the desk. Knuckles white. Breath shallow. The static on the monitors buzzed louder, sharper, turning into something that felt almost like whispers. Thousands of them. 5:55 and 41 seconds a.m., the memory collapses. Something touched my shoulder. Fingertips. Ice cold. Then, nothing. The silence came back. Then a whisper in my ear. A woman's voice. Don't worry. You'll do better this time. 5:56 a.m. aftermath. The monitors blinked back on. The coffee mug was empty again. A sticky note lay beside it. This one was black ink, but the paper was stained with the familiar brownish liquid. They survive by maintaining a consistent number. I flipped open the logbook. A new entry, in my handwriting, had appeared. Shift 7 begins. Guard number 42 pending. Then something else. A final rule, handwritten on the last page. When she finishes her drink, Unit 41 appears. But you must never let her see you count. 5:59 a.m., the final sip. The coffee mug refilled itself, slowly, right before my eyes. Then a faint lipstick stain appeared. Not coral. Not burgundy. Both. I stared at the monitors. Unit 41 had reappeared. Not in a specific corridor, but on all of them. Each screen showed it in a different location. Sometimes between Unit 4 and 17. Sometimes beside Unit 29. Sometimes nowhere at all. I looked back down at the desk. A tablet had appeared. On it, a draft job posting. Already filled out. 6 a.m., the cycle begins again. Position, Night Security Officer. Company, HollowBrook Storage Solutions. Shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Pay, $42.50 per hour. Posted by, my name. Underneath, a button labeled, Post Listing Now. My finger moved on its own. Click. The screen refreshed. Posting confirmed. Candidates will be contacted. Welcome back, Helen. The monitors returned to their usual 4-camera view. The mug sat still. The chair beside me rolled gently as if someone had just stood up. I looked toward the hallway. Nothing moved. But I knew. She was already here. Later, I found myself staring at a mirror I didn't remember being installed. I had my uniform on. Same boots. Same jacket. But my eyes looked older. Heavier. Faded. And on my lips, a faint stain of lipstick. Somewhere between coral and burgundy. On the security log, the last entry now read, "We are all Helen now."